Hey everyone, finally got some time to put together a more in-depth video for the Death Seal Crit Lich for 1.0. In this video, I will go over a couple of setups that you can do. I made a couple changes here and there, and depending on what you prefer, you might try one over the other. I'll also go over a quick TLDR for the leveling process for the Lich, and how I would typically level and gear early and mid-game, since there have been several questions in the comments in the previous Death Seal video, which, if you have not watched yet, I recommend you take a quick look. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so I do want to start off by saying that there are several, well maybe it's not several, but a couple of builds that you can do without Death Seal in 1.0, because as you know, Ward right now it's a Ward meta. But we are Death Seal enjoyers, so we reject Ward and we embrace life, okay? Alright, for Death Seal, since I already made a video going into details for the nodes in this tree, I'm not going to go over it again in this particular video. I do recommend you take a look at that video when you get a chance. However, I do want to point out that Corrupted Consciousness node is not working right now. We made a bug report to EHG, but they probably have other things that they need to prioritize in fixing. So hopefully this will be in... this fix will be in the near future. Right, we'll get some more damage out of our Death Seal tree. For Reperform, the crit setup is pretty stock standard. You want to take these nodes for increased damage, crit chance, cast speed, going to the right, and get armor per intelligence, necrotic, and poison res as well. I do want to point out that for this node, Unholy Dominion, you don't really need to take this node while you're going through campaign and early monoliths. You just reap your way. It's like 2 points into reap cooldown is like, it gives the reap is like 1.x seconds. And you'll want to take this node towards the end if you plan to do arenas, for instance, where you transplant into a pack of mobs, and if you don't kill them, then you have an option to reap out of the packs and get you out of some sticky scenarios. So besides that, if you don't do arenas and just YOLO echoes, then cares. It's up to you if you want to take this node or not. Okay. For Bone Curse, what I've been running recently is Bone Curse Aura. Been messing around with that. I'm gonna go over a couple setups, but let's go over this one first. So I wanted to see if Bone Curse damage could be good, and to my surprise, it's actually pretty decent. I'm gonna give you a little demonstration here. Bone Curse Aura, this big circle. So what it does is when you come in contact with the mob, it applies Bone Curse, right? What I want you to pay attention to is the Training Dummies health bar. Right underneath the health bar, you'll see a list of debuffs. You'll see Bone Curse. And you notice that Bone Curse is blinking, right? So the reason for that is because of a node called Acute Infliction inside the Bone Curse tree. And there's a reason why we want this. I'll go over that in a little bit. But the damage, as far as the numbers go, is looking like it crits from 50k-ish to upwards of 100k plus, slightly. And then that's without Death Seal. And then with Death Seal turned on, it goes upwards from like maybe 100k to 150, and that's not with min-max gear. So with min-max gear, I'm gonna guess it's gonna probably go around like 180 to 200, roughly. Okay. You can turn this aura into necrotic, and the reason why I haven't done so is because I don't have the points for it. I only have a +3 on the relic. You can get a +4 and change and get omnis if it's well rolled, obviously, and then get 2 additional points. And with those 2 additional points, you can take 1 point out of Iron Maiden and then use the 3 points to convert to necrotic. Even though I'm not sure if that damage is gonna make, like, converting it's gonna make much of a difference for the damage output, versus losing 10% that more damage here. Anyways, if you have the gear and you can try it out, let me know in the comments below. Okay, I'm gonna go over Bone Curse Aura nodes first. So we take Signet of Agni. This turns it into an aura, as you can see. Even though it decreases 40% the range, it's still fine, as you can see, right? We take all the damage nodes, so 3 points in Swift Release for 39% more damage, Iron Maiden for 50% more damage, and then Acute Infliction is what the node we were talking about earlier, was I was showing you, is 40% more damage, and the Bone Curse falls off after 4 hits, but this doesn't really matter because we have Aura, so it instantly applies it after it falls off, right? And then you're hitting so quickly, the 4 hits, like, you know, the blinking, it makes it look like it's blinking, right? The Bone Curse aura. Or I'm sorry, the Bone Curse debuff, right? So this synergizes well with Crimson Enlightenment because after, like, every time it falls off, it's casting a Rip Blood. And you know, this is additional hits, obviously. And we also have Bleed Overflow. Bleed Overflow, did I just say that? Bleed Overload. Which casts Rip Blood as well every second while you have the Bleed Overload up. So it's just more like additional hits, right? So a couple things to note here. The Mark for Death node, Sigil of Mortality, this doesn't apply baseline for the aura. You have to cast it because it does say that it's Mark for Death on cast. So this does work, however, with Transplant because you're applying what is it? You're applying the Mark for Death, Bone Curse on Transplant, and casting it this way will apply the Mark for Death. Okay. And then also, as far as sustaining this goes, you're gonna have to take the node in Rip Blood for Mana Feast, which grants you mana back, while you maintain this aura up. Since the playstyle is like you're basically just going around monoliths, transplanting, and then Rip Blood, transplant, Rip Blood, Death Seal, Rip Blood, right? Rinse and repeat. This is not much of an issue unless it's like no density, then you just turn it off, right? It's kind of like Death Seal. So another thing I want to point out for Bone Curse is that the Bone Curse hits does not apply outside sources of ailments, right? So if you like alt tab, if you do Control Alt here, it does say that it cannot apply ailments from effects such as chance to ignite on hit or chance to chill, chance to blah blah blah. It only applies the ailments within the tree, right? So the bleed chance here and the armor shred here, right? For instance. So it's unfortunate, otherwise there's a lot of hits. But yeah, it is what it is, right? So for Rip Blood setup that I have going with Bone Curse Aura, the two important nodes in this is obviously the Arcane Absorption, which gives us global spell damage on hit. We're spamming Rip Blood. This juices up our entire kit's damage. The other node that's important is the Mana Feast, which gives us mana back. This is our sustain for the Bone Curse Aura. And we want to have the -3 mana cost because we're also running Blood Splatters. Without that, it's kind of hard to sustain the mana. With high like cast speed, you're just going to run out of mana. The next Rip Blood Bone Curse setup we have is run by our good friend Amun. He's currently the rank 1 solo softcore Lich. He likes to have Rip Blood do more damage by this node for damage per minion, and also Run Dry, which is 40% more damage. Rip Blood. These don't affect splatters, by the way, it's just Rip Blood only. It's good for single target. So his Bone Curse setup is going to be run with Bone Prison because Bone Prison counts as minions, and each cast of Bone Prison is roughly 11 or so segments, so it's 11 minions. And with decent CDR, you can have 2 instances of Bone Prison up at any given time. And you also want to take the Bone Curse or Cursed Limbs because once you take Bone Prison, it puts cooldown on Bone Curse itself. So if you don't take Cursed Limbs, you're going to have a little problem moving around, like having Cursed Limbs apply or Bone Curse apply on subsequent skills. Whereas if you have Cursed Limbs, put down Bone Curse, and while it's on cooldown, you can Transplant to apply Bone Curse, you can Rip Blood to apply Bone Curse, like whatever skills that hits a mob, a target, will apply the Bone Curse still. He's taking the Bone Curse, the Bone Armor chance on kill, because he's not running Bone Armor on Transplant. Also going YOLO damage on Transplant. For the final setup for Rip Blood Bone Curse, this is the same setup I ran back in 0.9 a year ago. We're doing the Arcane Absorption for the global spell flat, taking all the cast speeds, we're doing the double splatters, and then we're converting it to necrotic. For Bone Curse, the only thing to point out here is someone made a comment in a previous Destio video asking about why are we taking Cursed Limbs still. Because you have to direct cast Bone Curse in order for this to apply. Well, that's the reason why you want to take it, because otherwise you're going to have to manually cast Bone Curse all the time on every set of mob, right? So instead of that, you, for instance, you're an Echo and you cast Bone Curse on a set of mobs, you have 4 seconds of Cursed Limbs following that, so that you don't have to manually cast Bone Curse again within that 4 seconds. You also have it on Transplant. So between Transplant and and Cursed Limbs, you won't have much issues with keeping Bone Curse up on mobs. And the other nodes here is pretty self-explanatory: Armor Shred, on the kill threshold, and the Mark for Death. And finally, for Transplant, this is what I'm running while I'm doing the Bone Curse Aura setup. We're opting to do more damage. This is 200% more damage versus Cursed, which is a pretty significant amount. Transplant does a lot of damage. You know, when you have Bone Curse Aura up, they're always going to be cursed. Or if you're not running Bone Curse Aura and you just want to do the standard Bone Curse setup, you just cast Bone Curse and then Transplant on top of them after that. The reason why we have kill threshold is because when I'm running Bone Curse Aura, I don't have the kill threshold node on Bone Curse, so that's why we have it here. If you're running standard Bone Curse and not running the Aura, then you don't need to take these threshold nodes, and you can allocate them to more damage here. On Transplant. The Sticky Blood node here, I only have this for the purpose of Arena because it's good for kiting. Outside Arena, this node is useless. If you don't do arenas, you take this point out, put in more damage. Okay. And if you're playing hardcore and you feel more comfortable with Bone Armor setup, the defensive setup, that's fine. Take these points out of damage and go get your defensives. Okay. Bone Armor setup here. That's what you want to do. But I mean, if I was to level my solo, level another hardcore character, I would still just go YOLO and do damage. So that's me. It's up to you what you want to do. Okay. For passives, the base Acolyte tree, pretty standard. Int and Necrotic Res. I like the armor over the increased damage. It's up to you if you want to take the increased damage over the armor. You want the vitality, and then these 2 points here. It gives you a Revenant. Every time you Death Seal, a Revenant will pop up. Why do I have this? Because it looks cool. Okay, it's good MTX. It's pretty much all it's for. If you don't care for that, put those 2 points somewhere else. You put in the vitality, put into armor, put into damage, whatever you want. Okay. Next, Necromancer. 4 points for 20 health, and on potion use you get 10% cast speed. It's nice for 4 points. Okay. Warlock. I'm running this for Bone Curse Aura setup, okay, because we want the damage. There's more flat damage for Bone Curse, more area for Bone Curse Aura, and then obviously the Bleed Overload will give us proc of Rip Blood every second. So while the Bleed Overload is up, so that's why we have this setup. Okay, if you're not doing the blood, if you're choosing to not run the Bone Curse Aura setup and just do a standard setup or like the Bone Prison setup, then I don't even think this 20 points in industry is even worth it. Just take it all out, put it into Lich. Okay. For Lich, it's pretty much it's been the standard setup for crit. If you haven't seen the previous videos or older videos of mine for going over Lich passives, the notable nodes is just 10 points here for 50% less physical damage and 50% less necrotic damage taken, because this synergizes really well with the Grimoire, which is a low level relic, right? And you can easily get 2 or 3 LP. I think in Merchant's Guild, like, you can buy a 3 LP 3 LP Grimoire for no gold, 0 gold. Like, it's like all over the place, right? So this one, you know, the reason for that is like Grimoire, it's also on potion use to take less void, less necrotic, and less poison damage, which is pretty scary types of damage, and it's good to have, right? And then everything else, you can just read over the nodes. It's just damage, crit, damage. There's like nothing to really point out here for the crit setup. Okay. Again, if you're not running the Bone Curse Aura setup and you don't want to put 20 points on Warlock, just fill in the points for intelligence, vitality, and some more damage, right? And more penetration. Okay. All right. I think that's Oh, one other thing to point out: this ward gain on crit when you're running Bonker's Aura, and I'm just like spamming. I didn't really pay attention to this too much, but if you notice, like my with no ward investment, I'm getting like 2k what is this called? 2k ward just by spamming Rip Blood. Because I'm getting 10 ward per crit, and we're critting a crap ton, right? Because of the Bonker's Aura, Rip Blood, splatters, blah blah blah, you know. And that's with me only having like 68% spell crit chance. Like if you have higher spell crit chance, you get a lot more, right? But we're going Death Seal, so this is relevant. Yeah, it might be a little like a good buffer while your Death Seal is on cooldown, but I mean, anyways, I just want to point that out. Maybe someone wants to like play around with that and not do Death Seal and, you know, do a ward build for Lich, and this might be good. So anyways, that covers for passives. I know I said at the beginning of the video that I was going to go over a quick TLDR of how I typically level the Lich, but this video ended up longer than I anticipated, so I will probably be making that leveling guide separately. I hope you found this video to be useful, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment below. We're going to end this video with some Bonker's Aura gameplay on tier 4 Jura. Alright, thanks for watching and see you next time.